Ricardo Mendoza had everything money could buy: a penthouse in Polanco, luxury cars, a company that billed millions per year. But that Thursday afternoon, while his driver navigated the traffic on Insurgentes, his perfect world crumbled in 5 seconds. There she was, Sofia Ramirez, the woman he had secretly loved for 2 years in college before he decided to pursue success without looking back. She was standing in front of an OXXO, desperately checking her phone, while 3 small children played at her feet. All 3 had the same rebellious brown hair he fought with every morning, the same crooked smile he saw in the mirror. They couldn't be his. It was impossible. He had broken up with Sofia 8 years ago, when he decided to move to the United States to study his MBA. He had told her he needed to focus on his future, that he couldn't maintain a long-distance relationship. The truth was simpler and more cowardly. He was afraid she would distract him from his dreams of greatness. "Stop here," he shouted to the driver, not taking his eyes off that scene that seemed taken from his most secret nightmares. He got out of the truck without waiting for an answer, walked to the crowd of pedestrians. But when he reached the place where he had seen them, they were no longer there. Only the echo of their childish voices remained, and an emptiness in his stomach he hadn't felt in years. That night Ricardo couldn't sleep. He called Miguel, his younger brother, the only one who knew all his secrets. "I need you to look for someone. Sofia Ramirez, psychology graduate from Tec de Monterrey, class of 2016. Any information you can get." Miguel didn't ask why. He knew that voice of Ricardo's, that controlled desperation that appeared when something really important was at stake. "I'll call you tomorrow," was all he said. The next day, Ricardo faked normalcy at the office. He attended meetings, signed contracts, smiled for press photos. But every time his phone rang, his heart raced, hoping for news from Miguel, until finally the call came at 6 in the evening. "I found her. She lives in Colonia, doctors. She's a child psychologist at a public clinic. Divorced 2 years ago. She has 3 7-year-old triplets." 7 years. Ricardo did the mental calculations. He had broken up with Sofia in January 2017. If the children were 7 years old... "Miguel, I need you to find out more. The children's names, exact birth dates, anything." "Ricardo, are you sure you want to get into this? If those children are yours." "I don't know, but I need to know." The information arrived in the morning. Diego Sebastian and Matias Ramirez, born October 15th, 2017, 9 months after the last night they had spent together. Ricardo stared at his computer screen with those facts that changed everything. It wasn't just that he possibly had 3 children. It was that Sofia had gone through a multiple pregnancy alone, had raised 3 children without his help, while he built his empire thinking only of himself. He made a decision that scared him more than any $1 million negotiation. He was going to look for her. The clinic where Sofia worked was a modest building in the city center. Ricardo parked his BMW a block away and waited. He didn't know what he would do when he saw her, what he would say to her. He only knew he needed answers. At 5:30, she came out. She walked with that confident step he remembered, but there was something different, more mature, stronger, also more tired. She headed toward the subway, and Ricardo followed her at a distance, feeling like a stalker but unable to stop. She got off at Doctor's and walked toward an elementary school. Ricardo saw her arrive at the door, where a line of children was waiting. His heart stopped when he saw the 3 little ones run toward her, shouting, "Mommy." She hugged all 3 at the same time, asked them how their day had been, checked their backpacks with the dedication of someone who has been doing this every day for years. From the distance, Ricardo could see them better. There was no doubt. They had his nose, his eyes, even the way one of them touched his hair when he was thinking was identical to his own nervous tic. He followed them to a small apartment in a 4-story building. He watched them climb the stairs, heard their laughter echoing in the central courtyard. He waited until the lights in an apartment on the 2nd floor turned on. He stood there for 2 hours, not knowing what to do. Finally, he gathered courage and went up the stairs. He knocked on the door with trembling hands. Footsteps approached and the door opened. Sophia froze when she saw him. "Hello, Sophia." She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him as if he were a ghost. "What are you doing here, Ricardo? We need to talk." "About what?" "After 8 years." At that moment, one of the children appeared behind her, the one most similar to Ricardo, with the same green eyes and the same curious expression. "Mommy, who is he?" Sophia looked at Ricardo, then at her son, then back at Ricardo. In her eyes was a mixture of pain, fear, and something like resignation. "He's an old friend. Go to your homework, Diego." The child obeyed, but not without first studying Ricardo with an intensity that made him feel uncomfortable. "Sophia, please. 5 minutes." She sighed, stepped out into the hallway, and closed the door behind her. "Are they mine?" The question came out direct, without preambles. Sophia looked at him in silence for what seemed like an eternity. "What does that change?" "Everything. It changes everything. For you, maybe. For us, no. We've been fine without you for 7 years. Why didn't you tell me?" Sophia let out a bitter laugh. "Tell you? When? After you told me you couldn't maintain a relationship because you had more important things to do? After you changed your number and deleted all your social media?" Ricardo felt the weight of his past cowardice falling on him. "I tried to contact you when I found out about the pregnancy," continued Sophia. "I called your brother, your friends. They all told me the same thing, that you were focused on your new life and didn't want distractions. So I understood the message. Sophia, No, you don't have the right to appear now with your apologies. These children don't need a father who shows up when he feels like it. They need stability. I want to be part of their lives. For how long? Until you get bored again? Until you find something more important?" The question hit him like a slap, because she was right. What guarantee could he give her that he wouldn't run away again when things got difficult? "Sophia, I've changed. We all change, Ricardo. I changed too. I changed when I had to go to all the medical appointments alone. I changed when I had to spend entire nights in the hospital because one of them had a high fever. I changed when I had to explain to them why other children had daddies and they didn't." Tears began to roll down Sophia's cheeks, but her voice remained firm. "So no, you can't just show up and expect everything to arrange itself for your convenience. It doesn't work that way." Ricardo wanted to hug her, ask for her forgiveness, promise her that this time would be different, but he knew words weren't enough. "What do you need me to do to prove I'm serious?" Sophia looked at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Time. I need time to think about it. And they need to get to know you gradually, if that ever happens. Can I see them again? Saturday we're taking the children to Hundido Park at 10 in the morning. If you really want to meet them, you can be there, but as a family friend. Nothing more for now." Ricardo nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and terror. "Thank you." Sophia turned to enter her apartment, but stopped. "Ricardo, one more thing. If you're going to be in their lives, it's going to be completely or not at all. You can't appear and disappear when you feel like it. They're not a weekend project." "I understand." She closed the door, and Ricardo stood in the hallway, processing everything that had happened. He had 3 children. 3 children he didn't know, who had grown up without him, who maybe didn't even need him. But for the first time in 8 years, he had something more important than money to fight for. Saturday came faster than Ricardo expected. He woke up at 5 in the morning with his stomach churning. How was he supposed to act with his own children? What was he going to say to them? What if they didn't like him? What if they rejected him? He put on and took off 5 different shirts before deciding on a casual t-shirt and jeans. Nothing that screamed Millionaire CEO, just a normal man trying to meet some children. He arrived at the park at 9:30 and sat on a bench from where he could see the entrance. His hands were sweating, and he kept checking his watch. At 10 o'clock sharp, he saw them arrive. Sophia was walking with the three children, each carrying a different ball. He watched them play from a distance for several minutes before mustering the courage to approach. "Hello," he said when he was close enough. Sophia tensed slightly but smiled. "Children, this is Ricardo. He's a friend of mine from college." All three looked at him with that shameless curiosity of children. Diego, the one he had seen the day before, was the first to speak. "Did you also study to be a psychologist?" Ricardo laughed nervously. "No, I studied business." "What is business?" asked Sebastian, the smallest of the three. It's when you help companies function better. Like when Mommy helps us organize our toys." The simplicity of the comparison moved him. "Yes, something like that." Matthias, who had been quiet, suddenly asked, "Why do you have the same eyes as us?" Sophia tensed, and Ricardo felt the world stop. Some people are born with similar eyes. My teacher says children look like their daddies," continued Matthias with that implacable logic of 7-year-olds. Sophia quickly intervened. "Who wants to play soccer?" "Ricardo, do you know how to play?" The next hour was one of the most surreal of Ricardo's life. He played soccer with his children without them knowing who he really was. He watched them laugh, fight over the ball, comfort each other when someone fell. He noticed that Diego was a natural leader, that Sebastian was the most sensitive, and that Matthias was the most observant. He also noticed what a good mother Sophia was. She knew them perfectly, knew when they needed water, when they were getting tired, how to handle their small arguments. She had raised them alone and had done an extraordinary job. When it was time to leave, Diego approached him. "Are you coming again?" Ricardo looked at Sophia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "If you want me to." "We do want you to," all three said in unison, and Ricardo's eyes filled with tears. Thus began a routine that extended for several weeks. Every Saturday they met at the park. Ricardo learned their favorite games, their preferred foods, their fears. He discovered that Diego wanted to be a veterinarian, that Sebastian adored drawing, and that Matthias was a genius with numbers. He also began spending time alone with Sophia after the children stayed with her sister on Sundays. At first they were tense conversations, full of reproaches and accumulated pain. But gradually, they began to remember why they had fallen in love in the first place. Do you know what was the hardest part? Sophia told him one afternoon while they had coffee in the same place where they used to meet in college. What? Explaining to them why other children had daddies, and they didn't. Diego asked me once if it had been his fault, if he had done something wrong for his daddy not to want to stay. Ricardo felt as if they had stabbed a knife in his chest. What did you tell him? The truth, that sometimes adults make decisions that hurt others without meaning to, but that wasn't their fault, that they were perfect exactly as they were. Sophia, I know you didn't know, but that doesn't take away the pain you caused. Not just to me, but to them. Ricardo nodded, understanding for the first time the real magnitude of his past actions. Is there any way to remedy this? Sophia looked at him for a long time before responding. Stay. This time, really stay. Not when it's easy or convenient. Stay when Diego has nightmares, when Sebastian is sick, when Matthias has a bad day at school. Stay for the difficult parts. I will. How can I be sure? It was a fair question. Ricardo had broken her trust once. Why should she believe him now? Because this time I have something to stay for that's worth more than any business or opportunity. This time I know what's really important. If you're enjoying this story and want to know what happens next, give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the ending. But fairy tales don't exist in real life. Just when Ricardo was beginning to believe he could fix his mistake, that he could be the father he should have been from the beginning, came the complication he hadn't foreseen. Carmen Delgado, his business partner and fiancée. Carmen was everything one would expect from the partner of a successful CEO. Elegant, intelligent, ambitious, and completely ruthless when it came to protecting her interests. She had been with Ricardo for 3 years, building together not just a relationship, but a commercial empire. The first time she noticed a change in Ricardo was subtle. He was arriving late to important dinners, getting distracted during meetings, rejecting business trips he would have accepted without thinking before. But Carmen hadn't gotten where she was by ignoring warning signs. She hired a private investigator. The photos arrived at her office on a Tuesday morning. Ricardo playing soccer with 3 children in the park. Ricardo having coffee with an unknown woman. Ricardo laughing at something one of the little ones had said, with an expression on his face that Carmen had never seen. True happiness. That night, she confronted him. Who are they? Ricardo was reviewing emails in his study when Carmen entered and dropped the photos on his desk. For a moment, his first instinct was to deny everything, invent an excuse. But he was tired of lies. They're my children. Carmen sat down slowly in the chair in front of him. You're what? 3 children, with my ex-girlfriend from college. I didn't know they existed until 2 months ago. And you decided not to tell me? It's meant for us. Carmen laughed, but it wasn't an amused laugh. What it meant for us. Ricardo, we spent 3 years building something together. We have plans, commitments, contracts. And you decide to start a secret family with another woman. It's not a secret family. They're my children, Carmen. I didn't choose for them to exist, but now that I know about them, I can't pretend they're not there. Of course you can. Send child support to the mother and forget about the matter. There are ways to handle these situations without them affecting your real life. The coldness of her suggestion astonished him. My real life includes those children. Since when? 3 months ago, you didn't even know they existed. And now what? You're going to play house with your ex while I step aside. I'm not asking you to step aside. I'm asking you to understand. Carmen stood up and walked to the window. I'm going to be very clear with you. Ricardo, I didn't sign up to be the stepmother of 3 children who appeared out of nowhere. I built my life around our plans, our company, our future. If you choose that family over what we built together, be very clear that it's not just going to be a romantic breakup. It's going to be a commercial war. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you the reality. Half of our most important contracts are under my name. I have relationships with investors you need. I can make your life very difficult if you decide she's worth more than me. Ricardo looked at her, really seeing for the first time the woman he had planned to marry. She was beautiful, successful, intelligent. But she was also cruel and calculating in a way he had confused with ambition. I can't choose between my children and my company, Carmen. Of course you can. You just have to decide what's more important. That conversation marked the beginning of the war. Carmen didn't fulfill her threat immediately. Instead, she began a subtle but effective sabotage campaign. Important meetings scheduled exactly at the time Ricardo used to see the children. Urgent business trips on weekends. Contracts that needed his personal attention just when he had promised to go to school plays. At first, Ricardo tried to handle both things. He rescheduled with Sophia, invented excuses with the children, tried to keep everyone happy. But it was unsustainable and everyone knew it. You were late again, Diego told him one afternoon after waiting an hour at the park. I'm sorry, champ. I had an emergency at work. Are we less important than your work? The question, formulated with the brutal honesty of a 7-year-old child, destroyed him. No, of course not. Then why are you always late? Ricardo didn't have an answer that a child could understand. How could he explain that there was a woman willing to destroy everything he had built if he didn't put work first? Sophia noticed the change too. What's really happening, Ricardo? He told her about Carmen, about the threats, about the pressure of managing 2 completely incompatible lives. Then choose. Sophia told him with that simplicity that characterized her. It's not that easy. Yes, it is. Either we're a priority in your life, or we're not. You can't have us here waiting for you to decide if it's worth fighting for us. That night, Ricardo stayed awake until 4 in the morning, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse. He had everything he had dreamed of when he was young: success, money, recognition. But he felt emptier than ever. He thought about the Sundays he had spent with the children, about how Diego had begun to tell him about his dreams of being a veterinarian, about how Sebastian had shown him his drawings with pride, about how Matias had begun to ask for his help with mathematics. He thought about Sofia, about how he had loved her in college, about how he had known from the beginning that she was different from all the other women he had met, about how he had chosen his ambition over his love, and how that had been the worst mistake of his life. And he thought about Carmen, about the life they had built together. A successful life, yes, but also cold, calculating, based on transactions rather than love. At dawn, he made a decision. He showered, dressed in his best suit, and headed to the office. Carmen was already there, reviewing contracts with her assistant. "We need to talk," he told her. She dismissed her assistant and closed her office door. "Have you made your decision?" "Yes, I choose my children." Carmen nodded, as if she had been expecting that answer. "Very well. Then this is what's going to happen. I'm going to exercise my purchase option on your company shares. I have contractual right to do so if I consider your behavior is affecting the business." "At what price?" Carmen smiled. "At the price it was when we signed the contract, 3 years ago, much less than what they're worth now." Ricardo felt as if the air had been taken out of his lungs. If Carmen exercised that option, he would lose millions. He would be practically bankrupt. "Besides," continued Carmen, "I'm going to make sure all our clients know exactly what kind of man you are. The kind who abandons his fiancée for an ex who showed up with convenient children. It won't be hard to sow doubts about your reliability as a business partner. This is revenge. This is business. I warned you what the consequences would be, and you chose to ignore me." Ricardo looked at her for a long moment. "Do it." "What?" "Exercise your option. Buy my shares. Destroy my reputation. Do whatever you want. But I'm not going to change my decision." Carmen seemed surprised by his response. "Ricardo, think about it carefully. You're going to lose millions. You're going to lose everything we built." "No, I'm going to lose money. I'm going to lose a company. But I'm not going to lose what really matters. Not again." That afternoon, Ricardo arrived at Sofia's apartment without warning. She opened the door and was alarmed to see his expression. "What happened?" "I lost everything. The company, the money, probably my reputation. Carmen is going to do everything possible to ruin me." Sofia let him in and closed the door. "And how do you feel?" The question surprised him. "How do I feel?" "Yes. Do you regret it?" Ricardo thought about his answer carefully. "No. I feel free. For the first time in years, I feel like I made the right decision." "And now what are you going to do?" "I don't know. Look for work, I suppose. Start over." Sofia sat next to him on the sofa. "Do you know what Diego told me yesterday?" "What?" "That he hoped Ricardo was his daddy. He didn't say it directly, but he asked me if it was possible for someone who wasn't the biological father to become the real daddy." Ricardo felt his eyes fill with tears. "What did you tell him?" "That, yes, it was possible. That being a daddy wasn't about blood, but about choosing to stay in love, even when it's difficult." That night, after the children fell asleep, Ricardo and Sofia talked until dawn. They talked about the past, about mistakes, about forgiveness. They talked about the future, about what it would mean to be a real family. "It's not going to be easy," Sofia told him. "I don't have money. I work 2 jobs to support the children. I can't give you the luxury life you're used to. I don't want that life. I want this one." "Are you sure? Because once you tell the children who you really are, there's no going back. They're going to depend on you. They're going to need you. And if you leave again..." "I'm not going to leave. I promise you." "How can I believe you?" Ricardo took her hands. Because this time I'm not choosing between what I want and what I should do. This time, what I want and what I should do are the same thing. The next day, they gathered the 3 children in the living room. Ricardo had been nervous all morning, mentally rehearsing what he was going to say. "Children, Ricardo has something important to tell you," Sophia began. All 3 looked at him expectantly. Ricardo took a deep breath. "Do you remember when Matthias asked why I have the same eyes as you?" They nodded. "Well, the reason is that I'm your daddy, your biological daddy." Silence fell. All 3 children looked at him with expressions ranging from confusion to hope. Diego was the first to speak. "Our real daddy?" "Yes. But why weren't you here before?" It was the question Ricardo had feared. "Because I made a big mistake. I didn't know you existed. But even if I had known, I probably would have made wrong decisions because I was young and foolish and believed other things were more important." "And now do we know we're important?" asked Sebastian. "Now I know you are the most important thing in the world." Matthias, who had been quiet, suddenly asked, "Are you going to stay?" "Yes, I'm going to stay forever. Even if we don't have a big house like in the movies? Even if we have to live in a cardboard box?" The children looked at each other, as if they were having a silent conversation. Finally, Diego spoke for everyone. "Okay, you can be our daddy." And so, in the simplest way possible, Ricardo finally became the father he should have been from the beginning. The following months were the most difficult and happiest of Ricardo's life. Difficult because he had to learn to live with much less money than he was used to, because he had to look for work for the first time in years, because Carmen fulfilled her promise to make his life complicated. Happy because he woke up every morning with real purpose. Because the children ran to hug him when he came home from work. Because Sophia looked at him with love again, even if it was cautious, even if it was gradual. He got a job as a manager at a medium-sized company. The salary was a fraction of what he earned before, but it was enough to help with the children's expenses and rent a small apartment near Sophia's. The transition wasn't perfect. The children sometimes tested his limits, wondering if he would really stay when things got difficult. Sophia struggled between allowing herself to trust him again and protecting her heart from another possible disappointment. But Ricardo persevered. He was there for midnight fevers, for school plays, for Saturday soccer games. He learned to braid Sebastian's hair when he decided to grow it long. He taught Diego how to change a flat tire on his bicycle. He spent hours helping Matthias with math problems that were more complicated than he remembered. A year later, on a quiet afternoon while the children did homework, and he helped Sophia prepare dinner, he realized something. He was completely happy. Not the superficial happiness he had felt when closing $1 million deal, but a deep and constant happiness that came from knowing he was exactly where he should be. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked him, noticing his thoughtful expression. "That it took me too long to understand what real wealth was." She smiled and approached him. "And what is it? This small kitchen, these children doing homework. You asking me what I'm thinking about. This is being truly rich." Sophia stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was the first real kiss they had shared since college, full of forgiveness, new promises, hope. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. I never stopped." 6 months later, Ricardo proposed to Sophia. It wasn't in an elegant restaurant or with a giant diamond ring. It was on a Sunday morning. While they were having pancakes, he had burned slightly, with the 3 children as witnesses. "Do you want to marry me?" he asked simply, offering her a simple ring he had bought with his 3-month savings. The children shouted yes before Sophia could answer, which made them all laugh. "Are you sure you want this man who burns pancakes as a husband?" Sophia asked the children, feigning seriousness. "Yes," they shouted again, and Diego added, "and as a daddy too." Sophia looked at Ricardo with tears in her eyes. "Yes, I want to marry you. But this time it's forever." "Forever," he confirmed. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony in the yard of Sophia's sister's house. The children were the groomsmen, Carmen didn't show up anywhere, and Miguel, Ricardo's brother, cried more than the bride. During his speech at the reception, Ricardo said something no one would forget. 2 years ago, I believe success was measured in money and recognition. Today, I know it's measured by the people who choose to stay with you when everything else crumbles. It's measured by children who call you daddy, even though you arrived late to their lives. It's measured by a woman who forgives you even though you don't deserve it and gives you a second chance to do it right. He paused, looking at his new family. I lost millions of pesos, but I gained something that's priceless, a family that chose me, just as I chose them. Life didn't automatically become perfect. Ricardo continued to struggle with the temptation to work too much, to try to give his family material things he couldn't afford. The children continued to have occasional nightmares about their daddy leaving again. Sophia continued to guard a small part of her heart, protecting herself just in case. But they faced these challenges together, as a family. 2 years after the marriage, Ricardo received an unexpected call. It was a headhunter offering him the opportunity to run a new startup with millionaire potential. The starting salary was 10 times what he currently earned. "Can I think about it?" he asked, although he already knew what his answer would be. That night, during dinner, he told everyone about the offer. "Does that mean you're going to travel a lot again?" asked Matias, now 10 years old and still the most observant of the three. "Probably." "Does that mean you won't be able to come to my soccer games?" asked Diego. "I would miss some of them." "Does that mean you would have a lot of money again?" asked Sebastian. "Yes, I would have a lot of money." The three children looked at each other, having another of those silent conversations they had developed over the years. "Daddy," said Diego finally, "do we need you to have a lot of money for us to be happy?" Ricardo looked at his son, then at Sophia, then back at the three children who were looking at him expectantly. "No," he answered honestly. "You don't need it." "Then don't take the job," said Sebastian with the simplicity of a 10-year-old child. "We're already rich. We have a family." The next day, Ricardo called a headhunter and turned down the offer. "Are you sure?" the man asked him. "This is a unique opportunity." "I'm sure. I already have everything I need." 5 years later, while watching his three now teenage children getting ready for school, Ricardo reflected on the path he had traveled. He had lost millions. He had lost a company. He had lost a reputation that had taken years to build. But he had gained something infinitely more valuable. He had gained the opportunity to be the father he always should have been. He had won back the love of his life. He had gained the respect of three extraordinary children who had chosen him as their daddy, not because he had to be, but because he had proven he deserved to be. Not every day was perfect. Diego, now in middle school, sometimes rebelled against the rules. Sebastian struggled with anxiety and needed extra support. Matias had become so good at mathematics that Ricardo could no longer help him with homework. But they were his, completely, unconditionally his, and he was theirs. One night, while he was reading in the living room after everyone had gone to sleep, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Matias, now 15 years old. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son." "Do you ever regret it? Having lost all that money and that company for us?" Ricardo closed his book and looked at his son, because that's what Matias was, his son in all the ways that mattered. "Matias, do you know what was the richest day of my life?" "Which one?" "The day you three told me it was okay for me to be your daddy. That day I became richer than I had ever been with millions in the bank." Matias smiled, gave him a quick hug, because teenagers can't be too affectionate, and went to his room. Ricardo stayed there, in the tranquility of his small but love-filled house, and knew with absolute certainty that he had made all the right decisions, because in the end he had learned the most important lesson of all. That real success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you're willing to sacrifice for the people you love. And that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. Years later, when the children went to college and Ricardo and Sophia were alone at home for the first time in decades, She asked him if he missed his previous life. The life where I had money but no family, where I had success but no love, where I had everything except what really mattered. Sophia nodded. Not for a second, he answered without hesitation. That wasn't my life. This is my life. You are my life. And while he hugged her in their small kitchen, the same one where they had shared thousands of family dinners, where they had helped with countless homework assignments, where they had solved teenage problems and celebrated small victories, Ricardo knew he had made the smartest decision of his career. Choosing love over success, family over fortune, real happiness over the perfect image. Ricardo Mendoza's story had become the story of a man who lost everything to gain everything. And in the end, that had made all the difference. If you made it this far and like this story, subscribe to the channel as we upload content like this every week.